All right, got it. We got this whole Nick Cannon situation that's still happening, and we're gonna talk about it. Now, there's a lot of, I guess, nuance is a proper word here, and I'm gonna share my opinion. And some of you guys will probably not like it, and you know what? Totally okay. So let's drop that intro one time.
I don't need nothing else. Every time I'm with you, yo, it's something else. It's a fact, and it's nothing else. Got your hand out, you don't even need a help. Oh, I don't need nothing else. Every time I'm with you, yo, it's something else. It's a fact, and it's nothing else. Got your hand out, you don't even need a help. Oh, that's right. I don't need nothing else.
What's going on? It's Ruslan with KingsDreamENT.com. This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire you to live God's dream for your life. We cover all kinds of different topics, from God to faith to music, marketing, culture, everything in between. So that's what this channel is about. I am a full-time hip-hop artist, creative entrepreneur. I've been one for 5 years, grossing 6 figures. I live in Southern California. Listen, if you are looking for a channel that is going to fall into either extreme or either group think of, man, I can't believe that, you know, Nick Cannon said this is the most racist thing ever, right? This is not the channel for you. Furthermore, if you think that what Nick Cannon said is 100% accurate and that there's nothing wrong with those statements, this ain't the channel for you. Either way it goes, I like to talk about nuance. I like to talk about the details. I like to understand both perspectives. And if you don't have any empathy or capacity to try and understand where he was coming from, again, this is the channel for you. I've understood these thoughts. I've understood this line of thinking. I think it's wrong for a variety of reasons. I made a video yesterday on why it was wrong, and you can go watch that video if you like. But the question is, should he have been dropped or canceled by ViacomCBS? That is the question that I want to get into. So I'm going to look at his response to this, and look at the original comments, look at the response, and go into the nuance. Again, this is not like first of all, I don't care what you think about me, because I got this like ban, hide button, and I could just turn off the comments if I want to, or whatever, report them. But this isn't about you liking me or not. This is about, like, where can we have empathy and understanding for each other. Anyway, so look, this is like probably the earliest I've gone on live, and I thought it'd be fun to just finish my workout. If you're watching this live with me, even if you're watching the replay, give this video a thumbs up. Let me know where you're watching this from. Those things help a ton, even if you're watching a replay. So again, shout out to everybody watching this live, and we're gonna go over this stuff now. Again, it's a lot going on. I think it's really indicative of where we are as a country. I think it's super bummer time, man. Okay, so let's read the comment. This is from Hip Hop DX, and then I'm gonna read you Nick's additional comment afterwards. He said, "It's never hate speech. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people." That's what Nick said, right? Semitic is the Jewish people. The Jewish people, Israel, right? And some of the stuff he's hinting at is influenced by Farrakhan and the Fruit of Islam and Black Hebrew Israelite theology and all that kind of stuff, which that's a whole lot to talk about. I got friends that are sort of in that camp. Shout out to my brother Zadok. He has a really good perspective on that stuff, and so we will. We could talk about it, but I would just defer to him on that. Okay. Then he goes on to say the people who don't have melanin are a little less. This is where the whole thing falls apart for me. I don't have a problem with him saying, melanin and black people have soul. I don't think he was saying all white people are soulless. I think when you start getting into language like a little less, then you're really entering some problematic conversations. Now, whether or not black people can and can't be racist, or black people can and can't be black supremacists, again, I don't care. Like, it goes back to your definition of what is racism and what is supremacy. And it doesn't really matter to me because we have some real issues we need to work on. And I think statements like this are counterproductive for those things. Okay, so let's keep going. So they're acting out of fear. They're acting out of low self-esteem. They're acting out of a deficiency. It's the deficiency, right? This is where those words come in, deficiency. So therefore, they only way they can act is evil. The only way they can act is evil. They have to rob, steal, rape, kill, fight in order to survive. So then these people that don't have what we have, and when I say we, I mean melanated people, they had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They are the true savages. Again, this is in regards to is Israel and Jewish people the true Jews, and a lot of stuff that comes from kind of some of the Black Hebrew Israelite, the Fruit of Islam, Farrakhan. Here is why this is problematic, and I said this yesterday, is because but very few people can give an actual response on what is white in 2020. Here's what I mean, and I said this yesterday in yesterday's video. White is a social construct created by white people in power to oppress Black people in America, right? Black and white. Now, white is a wide umbrella of people, a wide, broad umbrella of people. But where do people who appear white that don't come from these mountains that he's describing from? Right now, are there a certain percentage of white people that came from caves? We were cavemen, sure, okay, fine. But to do a broad stroke and say all white people are more aggressive and are more barbaric, I think this is where you fall short, and this is where you just get into just very murky waters where you're using broad generalities to paint an entire demographic of people. Are there white people in history that have done barbaric things, that have been like savages? Clearly there are. Clearly, the slavery that was here in America was disgusting and awful, right? So that goes without saying, right? Now, but are all white people with deficiency and are actually closer to animals and true savages? I mean, how you answer that question reveals more about your heart, right? And shout out to Larissa. She said, I listened to the podcast last year. He specifically was referring to the white people who oppress. So he wasn't referring to the statements. Was he referring to only the white people who are aggressive, oppressive, barbaric? I don't know. I don't know if he was referring to. How that came out was not the way, if that's what he meant, that's not the way it came out. It came out as a broad stroke statement, packaged with the other stuff that's connected to some of the anti-Semitic speech. So let's just get that out of the way, right? I think this is problematic because how do you define who is and isn't white? No one can give me a clear answer on if Indo-Europeans are white. Who are Indo-Europeans? Those are Iranians, those are Persians, those are Armenians, right? And so whiteness is usually attributed to American colonizing white, right? That's what it's, then that's who the term was created for, right? To oppress black people. So it's a social construct. Whiteness doesn't exist, right? But according to Nick, all people who lack melanin fall into this category. So my question is, someone like me who appears fair-skinned, right? I am fair-skinned, but if you know anything about my lineage, I'm Armenian, I'm Indo-European, I come from Azerbaijan, Baku, I'm a refugee, country is north of Iran, right? Where do I fall on the spectrum? And I don't really get an answer for that. Now, I've made videos, multiple videos, and if you're new to the channel, listen, I understand. But I made multiple videos acknowledging my own privilege. I've talked about it on Brandman Sean's channel. I've talked about it on this channel. And it is what it is, right? But you can't really get a clear answer on these things, right? My ancestors did not come from caves, and they were not barbaric animals, and they did not oppress people of color with melanin, and so on and so forth, right? So is it based on someone's appearance that they're this way? Because there's a lot of, again, white people, wide spectrum. There's Russians, there's Armenians, there's Indo-Eurasians, there's Italians, there's French, there's Irish people, Scottish people, right? Wide spectrum of people. So who is he specifically talking about? It did not sound like he was specifically talking about white people who colonized and were oppressors. And I think that's where he dropped the ball. Furthermore, it reinstates the notion that certain groups are inferior and superior, right? Which is what some people would say, well, that is racist. Again, I don't have a dog in a fight on whether black people can be racist or not. It goes back to definition. But to say that one group is genetically more likely to be savage-like, genetically more likely to be oppressive because of the genes passed down. It reinstates the very things that were said about black people, except now we're saying the same thing about white people. And then two, it goes back to like nature versus nurture. Modern sociology would say that a lot of what is happening with our social constructs goes back to how people are raised and the environments they're exposed to, that hate and bias is something we learn, is not something we're born with. So, that contradicts some of the sociological things that we know about how racism works, right? And how oppression works. You see what I'm getting at? So, I'm going to take my time with this because yesterday, I had a limited time. I had to go take my mom to a doctor's appointment. Now, let me look at some of your guys' comments. How is this about who is completely white? I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, but I think his topic, who is not Semitic or Hebrew, I'm not a historian, but seems your dialogue is apples. No, it's not apples to oranges, because this is why these broad generalities fall apart, because you're addressing things that are just more nuanced. Things that they just are, right? Again, in this context, in our modern society, I am white. I've acknowledged that. I have a degree of white privilege. I have no problem with acknowledging that. I've been talking about this for years. But am I, because of my fair skin, more barbaric, closer to an animal? Right? This is where I think it gets convoluted and just murky. But let's move on. Now, were there things done? Obviously, horribly. But this is, I think, what's really happening here. And we'll go and look at some of the responses, right? His response and all that kind of stuff. I think what's happening here is there's two different things. There's the issue of systemic racism, which we need to work on, and we need to, create systems and correct systems. There's that. And then there's the issue of anti-Semitism. I don't know if Nick is an anti-Semite. I'm not going to put that on him. And by the way, me and Nick come from the same town. We have mutual friends and acquaintances. So this is not like, this isn't an attack on him. I think Nick is a cool dude from everything I've heard about him. I think he has a lot of great contributions. He's discovered a lot of people. He's put a lot of people on. He's a great entrepreneur. So this isn't an attack on Nick. This is let's pick apart the ideas if we're going to be critical thinkers in this, right? So this is where I think it's coming from. I think when there is an imbalance of power, when there is oppression, when there is systemic racism, when there's these things, there can be a overcorrection of sorts, right? There can be a yo-yo response. And I think that's what we're seeing happening. You see black people treated and spoken of as less than 3/5 of a man. All these things, like horrible things that are just not true. We should never tolerate that. And unfortunately, white people and the white church has tolerated that. I'm not going to define systemic racism. You can Google systemic racism. I use a broader definition of systemic racism as racist people who corrupted laws and created structures of racism. If you don't think systemic racism exists, I don't know, because then you got to give me an answer of when did racism end. And black people were slaves 150 years ago. That's like 3 or 4 people ago, right? That there are people alive today whose grandparents were possibly born as slaves. That's a fact. Okay. And then you talk about civil rights. That was 50 years ago. Black people were in Jim Crow and apartheid up to 50 years ago. And then if you want to get more detailed, Alabama banned interracial marriage. What year? The year 2000. Okay, the Fair Sentencing Act wasn't passed until the year 2010. So when did systemic racism ended if you think it didn't exist? Or if you think it doesn't exist? When did it end? Right? That, you know, and then we still have laws like qualified immunity, and we still have people sitting in prison for, you know, selling $4,500 worth of weed in the 90s that are in prison for 40, 50, 60 years. That's happening right now in Michigan. There's a man who's been in jail since the 90s for selling $4,500 of weed, right? Corrupted systems, bad bureaucracy. There's something going on. There's something going on. And again, this is where you have an overcorrection, right? This is where you have, we're going to go yo the opposite direction. We're going to say, oh, no. Black people are not only are black people created equal, white people are actually the ones that are inferior. Right? And again, this is coming from a place of hurt. This is coming from a place of oppression. Like, that's where it's coming from, right? So that's why, but it doesn't make it right. And I'll parallel you guys this example. I don't speak on this too often because I have friends in every walk of life, right? I'll get to the issue of anti-Semitism. On the issue of anti-Semitism, I seen a quote where he said, "How can it be anti-Semitic when we're the Semitic people? If that's true, is he wrong?" I'm reaching. I'll get to the issue of anti-Semitism here in a sec. Hakeem, I appreciate you being here. I'll give you guys a parallel. And I'm taking my time with this because yesterday was a 15-minute video. I was in a rush. Break it down. The issue is look at it like this. When you have a group of people that have been denied rights, right? And I'm gonna jump off on a ledge. I'm not gonna jump off on a ledge. I'm gonna give you guys something that you may disagree with. And by the way, thank you guys for watching this live. Give this video a thumbs up, right? The LGBTQ community, right? They were denied rights for a long time, and it wasn't okay. And what happened? You had some people of the LGBTQ community who were hurt by the church, intentionally going out and trying to get churches to not marry them and then file discrimination lawsuits, not make their wedding cake and then file discrimination lawsuits, right? Now, I don't think the majority of LGBTQ people are on a vendetta to hurt churches and, you know, who may disagree with their lifestyle. I don't think that's the issue, but I think that it was denied so long that there was like an overcorrection of sorts, that there was a desire to fight back against people who, you know, wedding cakes and that kind of stuff. And it's unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate that this stuff happens and that people are denied rights. And I think that's what you're seeing from some of the Black Hebrew Israelites, is that it's really from a place of hurt. It's from a place of like, man, this isn't right. And therefore we're going to overcorrect. Now, here's an example of a way wild overcorrection. And yes, Nick Cannon has been off base. And yes, I addressed this yesterday. I made a video about Nick Cannon being wrong about monogamy, right? You guys could go back and look at that. Okay, this is who he was interviewing, Professor Griff from Public Enemy. He said, Griff faced similar criticism after saying Jews are responsible for the majority of the wickedness in the world, which led to his dismissal from Public Enemy. Crazy. But despite his controversial past, Cannon praised Griff and the anti-Semitic Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan and promoted conspiracy theories about the Rothschilds banking family and the notion people of African descent are true Jews. Now, are there African Jews? Are there black? Of course they're black Jews, right? If you like you go back to the Queen of Bathsheba and you go back to Christianity having deeper roots in Ethiopia than anywhere else. Clearly, you know what I mean? And so this is you know, but the belief that there was a swap and that these white Caucasian Jewish people stole the identity, I think that's a stretch. I think that's a huge stretch. And I think that, again, overcorrection, right? Overcorrection. You're going from one radical extreme to the other extreme. So let's keep going. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep going. And by the way, like, again, guys, like, I'm not here for the toxic comments. Like, I don't have any problem just turning stuff off or banning people from my channel. We're going to have nuanced civil discourse because I think it's important that we do that. And I think it's important we objectively look at these things. Now, let's look at Nick Cannon's reaction. So here's what he tweeted. He says, anyone who knows me knows that I have no hate in my heart, nor malice. I do not condone hate speech, nor the spread of hateful rhetoric. We are living in a time when it's important that everyone to promote unity and understanding. The Black and Jewish communities have faced enormous hatred, oppression, persecution, and prejudice for thousands of years, and in many ways have and will continue to work together to overcome these obstacles. I think he's actually saying the Jewish community. I don't think he's trying to be coy and say, you know, I'm really meaning Black Jews. No, I think he really means Jews. I think he really means Jews that were persecuted during during the Holocaust, like by Hitler. I think that's what he's talking about here. I think he means that. When you look at the media and other sectors in our nation's history, African Americans and the people of the Jewish community have partnered to create some of the best, most revolutionary work we know today. I am an advocate for people's voices to be heard openly, fairly, and candidly in today's conversations about anti-racism and social justice. I think we all, including myself, must continue educating one another and embrace uncomfortable conversations. It's the only way we all get better. Until then, I hold myself accountable for this moment, take full responsibility because of my intentions are only to show that as a beautiful human species, check this out, now he goes into we're all human species, we have way more commonalities than differences, so let's embrace those as we will, as well as each other. I think that's a very, you know, way to attempt to, he came short of apologizing, but it's an attempt to kind of clean this up, right? Now, CBS Viacom, which is where Wild 'N Out is hosted, and he had something similar happen like this with NBC. And by the way, like, kudos to this dude for standing up for what he believes in. If this is the stuff he believes, I don't know if he actually believes this or if he's just reciting stuff that he's heard, or I don't know how deep he's looked into this, but the notion that, you know, white Jewish people, white Israelites swap themselves, or that they're not truly Israel or whatever. Like, I just think that is very, very difficult to substantiate, and there just isn't a ton of historical basis for that. Did he lie saying they committed thievery across the planet to build their empire? Again, bro, who are they? Who's they? Like, are we talking about the, like, white people? Are we talking about modern day Jews who can trace their lineage? Like, who are we talking? This is where we get into these wild, broad generalities. They're not helpful. They're not helpful, right? I think the danger is people begin to be offended by this, but continue to overlook the fact of white supremacy. I think that is the reason why I shut off the comments yesterday is because you had one of two perspectives. You had one perspective that was acting like this is the worst thing ever, and this is the most racist thing they've ever heard, right? And so, boom, that is when, and it was just, oh my gosh, Nick is an animal. I'm like, well, that's not fair. Like, you have zero empathy, understanding, or compassion for where he's coming from. That's one perspective. White people just extremely offended. And then you have the other perspective that was like, yeah, he's right. Also hypocritical, because this type of thinking is how we got to this current place, right? Neither side is helpful. And so you're totally right, Shayunu. You're totally right. We are overlooking the actual issues that Breonna Taylor's murderers haven't been brought to justice yet. We're overlooking the actual issues that we do need the 8 Can't Wait campaign, that we do need to really consider where some of the funding going to police officers, if they're responding to the majority of calls that they're getting are not violent or felony crimes. They're mental health stuff and homelessness and all that kind of stuff. There's just some real issues, and when we do this, we get offended about the wrong stuff, right? We get offended and we go into murky waters and have conversations about stuff that doesn't really matter. So this is where I feel like I think Nick said what he wanted to say. And again, I think in the way that cancel culture works, there is a overcorrection. You want to just dismiss somebody, or with Nick, literally cancel his shows instead of allowing people to what? To be wrong. I would have loved to see ViacomCBS, instead of saying, hey, Nick, your show is canceled, hey, get him to do a panel with some Jewish rabbis, with some Black Hebrew Israelites, get a wide spectrum of people, right? With some historians, with some anthropologists, with different people from different backgrounds, and do a panel and let people, come to their own conclusion instead of deplatforming him, right? You can't, it's just, this is where I think it's not helpful, right? There has to be nuance. You're totally right, Hakeem. There has to be nuance, dialogue, right? And it can't just be all emotional. Cancel culture is emotional. It doesn't allow people the opportunity to be wrong. And let's be honest, we're more wrong than we're right a lot of times because we're reacting out of our gut and out of our feeling, and that's not always truth. That's not always history, right? And I don't care if it's in a book or if it's packaged well. Again, to say that all white people are closer to animals and have deficiencies is where he fell short. But let's not act like this is the most racist thing that's ever happened, white people, right? Like, come on, you know what I mean? And so let's look at this other statement he put together. And I appreciate this statement. He says, truth and reconciliation, I am deeply saddened in a moment so close to reconciliation that powers that be misuse an important moment for us all to grow closer together and learn more about one another instead. The moment was stolen and hijacked to make an example of an outspoken black man. I will not be bullied, silenced, or continuously oppressed by any organization, group, or corporation. I am disappointed that Viacom does not understand or respect the power of the black community. Yeah, like, I'm with him here. Like, again, I think Viacom could have handled this differently. Right now, granted, they're a private corporation. They could do what they want. But what is the most beneficial? What's the most beneficial? Like, what's the most helpful, right? He says, I was a member of the Viacom family for over 20 years. Since I was a minor, we worked together to make great positive entertainment and was handed many opportunities. I'm grateful. At 17 years old, I was deemed the youngest staff writer in TV history on the various Nickelodeon series. That's the thing. Viacom also owns Nickelodeon. In 2009, the wonderful and amazing blessed me with the opportunity to become the youngest television chairman in history, placing the teen division of Viacom solely in my hands as an executive. I didn't know that. That's amazing, right? She, along with the strong and brilliant Marva Smalls, guided me through the corporate infrastructure that at times felt overwhelming due to my doubting my abilities. As a black man, I'm forever grateful for them. Leaders with their support, I rose to occasion of Viacom, creating philanthropic opportunities. Sounds like he did a lot of really cool stuff with Viacom. And then he goes on to say, in change from bigotry, homophobia, racism, and even attempting to find a cure for AIDS and cancer. These young people had big ideas, right? And he goes on to say, while now an idea which I self-financed out of my own pocket and presented to MTV, I created $1 billion brand that expanded across multiple empires. I didn't know he financed Wild 'N Out. That's amazing, right? I don't have to defend myself here. The proof is in the history. Don't know if the proof is in the history, my G. I believe that the corporation was becoming more progressive and willing to create helpful spaces and dialogue in these difficult and uncertain times, but that's not what was happening. Like, creating meaningful spaces is to have both perspectives and to have civil dialogue, right? And to have like reasonable conversation about these things. Instead, they chose to recently ban all advertisements that supported George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. That is wrong. They should not have done that. If that is true, which it sounds like it is, we are still seeking justice for. I also want, as far as to reach out to Ms. Ashina, the owner of Viacom, to have a conversation of reconciliation, actually apologize if I said anything that pained her or her community. She didn't want to have the conversation. They wanted to show me who was boss, hang me out to dry, and make an example of anyone who says anything they don't agree with. But like the great Shirley Cosmo says, I am unbossed, unbought, and unbothered. I respectfully stepped away from oppressive corporations in the past. NBC threatened me. So he stepped away from an 8-figure salary from NBC. Again, commendable. Like, this man is talking about, he's standing up for what he believes in. Take my talents and executives to creativity to open-minded, willing people at Fox News. He created another show. Right now is the time for strong voices and compassionate thinkers. Compassionate. I don't know if your comments were compassionate, Nick, if we're going to be honest. To step up and create a dialogue of healing. Dr. King said we must learn to grow together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. Ironically, at that time, our government called him the most dangerous Negro in the country. And this is happening right now. Derek Minor did a video yesterday about the Black Lives Matter movement and how a lot of the rebuttals to it by white Christians, unfortunately, is Marxism, cultural Marxism. And like, There's a difference between Black Lives Matter, the organization, Black Lives Matter, the movement, so on and so forth. This is happening right now. They did this to Dr. King. They called him a communist. They called him a Marxist. And it's happening right now to anybody who's willing to agree with the sentiment that Black Lives Matter and willing to go out and protest and to speak on these things, right? This is happening right now, and it's unfortunate. It's whack. That is not okay. And label them a terrorist, right? And this is true, right? And he goes on to talk about Hollywood is a dirty business. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. That's a Malcolm X quote. They could try to kick me while I'm down or force me to kiss the master's feet in public for shame and ridicule. But instead, I stand firm on my square with my fist in the air, repeating my mantra, you can't fire a boss. Amen. In a pleasant turn of events, and the best blessing of all of the hurtful attacks is the outpouring of love and support from the Jewish community. It has been amazing. I have spoken with many rabbis, clergy, professors, and co-workers who offer their sincere help. I must apologize to my Jewish brothers and sisters for putting them in such a painful position, which was never my intention. But I know this whole situation has hurt many people, and together we will make it right. That's a fair statement. That's a fair statement. That's a fair statement. What's not a fair statement is co-signing Professor Griff's statement that Jews are responsible for the majority of the wickedness in the world. That is not a fair statement. That is on some Hitler stuff, fam. You know what I'm saying? Not lit, right? So I think this is where, again, cancel culture. And it's like, if he's not going to be publicly canceled, then the corporation will step in and cancel his shows and cancel his creative, contributions and mess with his money. And I wish that we could have actual dialogue. And it doesn't, like, by the way, this doesn't have to be me. This doesn't have to be me and Nick Cannon having a conversation, right? There's people way smarter than me. There's Jewish rabbis way smarter than me, teachers, anthropologists, so on and so forth. I made a video on why I think he was wrong, right? And even in that video, like, y'all came for me, which is fine. Rosanna Barr, I don't know who Rosanna Barr is. I keep it a buck with you, right? All I'm speaking on is my opinion and why I think canceling people and deplatforming people is not helpful. I think Nick could have done a better job with allowing this flippant type of like conversation to happen, right? And again, overcorrection, right? We have issues with racism in police, with qualified immunity, and how a lot of them are not brought to justice. So what are we going to do? We're going to defund and abolish all police. I don't think that's a good idea. Should we reappropriate some of the funds where police officers are going on mental health checks and addressing homelessness, which apparently it seems like that's the majority of what they're arriving for? Yes, we should. And we should send people who are better. Should we train better police officers? Should we get rid of qualified immunity? Right? Yes. But abolishing doing away with police, which is, again, the extreme. This is an overcorrection, right? We want equal opportunity for all people. I desperately want that. Equal opportunity. I want everybody to have a shot, right? I want everybody to have a shot. We want equal output. We don't want just equal opportunity. We want equal output. Now you get into socialism, right? Now you get into we're going to take away people's private property rights. Overcorrection, right? It's an overcorrection. And overcorrections don't benefit us as a whole when we're trying to make progress. It just sways the pendulum in the opposite polar direction. Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that's just not helpful. It's just not helpful. I think Nick handled this appropriately. I don't think he should have been banned. I'm not a proponent for cancel culture in general, right? In general, I don't think we should be canceling anybody, right? And I think there are double standards. Especially what you're seeing happen right now with Tucker Carlson on Fox News. Like, my man's had the wild racist writer on his show who was proven to be just saying wild stuff in these private forums. And then what happened? That guy gets fired. Tucker Carlson goes on an overdue vacation. Here in Nick's case, and by the way, Tucker Carlson definitely perpetuates some covertly racist ideologies, right? And over here on the opposite end, like Nick instantly gets fired. I think that's a double standard. Then again, maybe they're not exactly alike. Maybe both situations aren't exactly alike. So what is the solution? Like, what is the solution? Well, it's definitely not cancel culture. And it's definitely not canceling and deplatforming people who you may disagree with. If somebody is inciting violence, then absolutely you shouldn't do that. But that's not what Nick was doing here. He was perpetuating nonsense, in my opinion. The first part about them being savages is not false, though. The ancestors did some damage. Okay, again, that goes back to which white people, because there's tons of ethnicities. Race is a social construct, according to sociology. I'll keep going over this, right? And even acknowledging it repurposes the idea of supremacy, right? It's just now we're repackaging it and we're saying black people are superior when historically we've said white people are superior, right? So what do you like? How do you decide which end? And then it further along goes to what is more susceptible, nature or nurture? Is it nature or is it nurture, right? Because in the same way, what's the matter? You don't like? Oh, come on! Now you're just being silly. Like now you're just being goofy, and you're just trolling. And by the way, listen, if I'm wrong, instead of going back and forth with me in a comment section. How about you make a video and respond to my points and educate me? How about you do something creative, right? Right? The art of dialogue is dying. Rather than deconstruction of arguments, it seems like the jump is to dismantle character rather than simply correct. I think Nick needs to be correct. And that was my attempt with yesterday's video. Thank you for that, right? So you have overcorrection happening. And I don't think we should be deplatforming people. I think we should be having dialogue, and I think there's a double standard. These ideas of race are fairly modern. Historically, if we look at through the history of the world, the issues we've been dealing with is power and classism. America masked that as racism, right? And there's an amazing talk of Pastor Dr. D.A. Bernard with Carl Lentz. You guys should all go check that out, right? You seem like a good white man. It's the ancestors I think he's talking about. But yes, but again, you got to understand, like my perspective is so nuanced, right? My perspective is so nuanced. I appreciate where you're coming from in saying that I'm a good white. I can't even get an answer from my black friends who really know me in real life. By the way, the majority of my friends and family are black, who know me, who see me with my dad, who looks Arab, right? I can't even get an answer on if I'm white. Now, I will acknowledge my own whiteness because I've benefited in this society, right? But to say like it's the ancestors, whose ancestors? Who's that? I'm Armenian. Google the genocide of 1915. My lineage literally had nothing to do with slavery at all. Nothing with colonizing any African nation at all, ever. Like, that's just not in my history. We didn't come from caves. But I'm white. You don't think there's other white people like me that you just can't trace the lineage back to imperialism or colonization or slavery. But we would put them in this umbrella of all white people, right? And I think in the same way, we got to have just scales. Like, we have to have just scales. We got to have a willingness to say, hey, this thought isn't right. I'm not going to attack the individual. I'm going to say this thought isn't right. Okay? And we have to correct it. In the same way, when I talk about Black Lives Matter and white people say, yeah, but all white lives matter. Yeah, but what about black on black crime? And I have to correct them on why that's not helpful, why that's unhealthy, why that doesn't benefit anybody, right? So now we're going to say, we got to do the same thing here. Stop blocking people who ain't being negative. Fam, I could block whoever I want to. Like, get off my timeline if you got a problem with it. I'm having a reasonable conversation and you're being triggered. Make a video. How about you add a picture to your daggone emoji? Like, you're sitting, like, come on. Like, put your face on social media and make a video and rebuttal what I'm saying, right? Somebody in here just chimed in and they said white people don't all have the same lineage, right? The Irish have no history of imperialism and colonization. Look up Seneca Village. Look up Seneca Village. Look up Seneca Village, where Central Park was, another great injustice against black people, and look at who was living there. It was black people and Irish immigrants, right? And they did away with that, and it was a huge injustice. Seneca Village, Google that, right? These people were living in the same communities because at one point Irish and Italians were viewed as subhuman in America as well. Then they just kind of became white, right? So I don't know. I think we are. I think we're just in a very weird time, and I don't listen, guys. Look, you can't cancel me. like I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna tell you objectively. We're gonna talk about the nuance, okay? And we're gonna have these conversations. And if that offends you, and you need to have 5 different YouTube accounts to come in here and troll me, I'll ban all of them. Like, it's cool. But if you want to have meaningful dialogue, make a video, respond, debunk my claims. Because I made one about Nick. And again, the idea of whiteness just completely falls apart when you start getting into what it is. And the fact that we would endorse this while at the same time acknowledging that it's a social construct is just hypocritical. It's ironic. It's silly. It's silly to repurpose the same toxic ideas that got us this divided as a country. Prove me wrong. Make a video. Make a video. Show your face. Right? Show your face. If you're being critical of my position, which I think is a very reasonable position, like, I don't know. I think Martin Luther King would probably hold my position. I think Malcolm X, towards the end of his life, would agree with my position, who left the Nation of Islam because of some of these same things, right? I think a lot of people would agree with what I'm saying here, right? That you can't dismiss. And by the way, this isn't on some like me wanting credit for being some white ally. Like, I think that whole notion is silly. Like I don't need affirmation for saying or doing the right thing and speaking up for those who are being marginalized, right? So we need to be entering Jesus in all these conversations about racial inequality. The world will never see eye to eye on this unless Jesus is at the center. Amen. And what did Jesus do? Jesus pressed into hard situations, right? With the Samaritan woman, with the parable of the Good Samaritan, and he rocked their entire perception of what their own discrimination was, right? So I do think that, and I think everything I'm saying is coming from a Christ-centered worldview, and that, listen, Genesis, God said, let us make man in our image. Every person is created in the image of God, regardless on the social construct and label of race that we want to put over them. Right? So I think that is what needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? I think that is what needs to happen. And we need to go ahead and have more meaningful dialogue. You know what I'm saying? Have more meaningful dialogue. There's so many videos out, YouTube. We woke now. You need to research. What? Like, this is like, come on, fam. Come on. Like, this, overcorrection. You know what I'm saying? Overcorrection. Race didn't come into the world until the 17th century. Google it. Look at the social construct of race. Who made it up? Who was it for the benefit of? Now we're taking it and we're flipping it and we're demonizing the very people who demonized black people. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. All lives matter, but we need to stand up for the lives that are being oppressed. And right now, it's our African-American family. Amen. You're 100% right. The Samaritan woman wasn't a parable. It was, I said that's the parable of the Good Samaritan. My bad if I misspoke. The Samaritan woman was a story, right? And then there was the parable of the Good Samaritan, both of which shattered all of their divisive, separatist ideologies as Jews in that time. You know what I'm saying? And so I think these things should be discussed. I think we should have nuanced conversation about them. And I think we have to denounce and say, hey, this is not right. This thinking, that positions any race over any race based on genetics, right, is re-insinuating the very thing that we're trying to dismantle. And again, I want equal opportunity. I don't want equal output, right? I want all men to be treated equal, you know? And so where are we headed with this stuff, right? And by the way, those of you guys that are like super passionate, again, most of you guys aren't actually making anything. You aren't creating anything. You aren't making videos. You're not contributing besides being a troll in an internet section, you know? When did race come into the equation? Who created the idea of race? I went over this. You're late to the conversation, Black Film Guild. White people created race as a social construct to oppress black people. Again, I've said this multiple times. And I you know, I don't. You're new. It's okay. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Would you like to input on the general media publication of the race war that is driven by the powers that be? I don't know if it's a race war. I think it's media being media and capitalizing on being divisive. I don't know if I would say, you know, it's a race war. I think it's just, you know, media being media, you know, and it's unfortunate. So what if the descendants of slavery really did belong to the Israelite? Yeah, some of them probably did. Again, you're late to the conversation. It's cool. I said it before. Were there black Jews and black Israelites? Probably, yeah. Why? It's not a radical idea to me, right? Christianity goes back to Ethiopia before any other continent, you know, with respect to like where it founded from. It goes back to Ethiopia. Ethiopia was the first Christian nation. Before that, the Queen of Sheba. Like, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. Like, we're saying the conspiracy theory is the swap. The conspiracy theory is these white evil people stole Israel's identity. That's really hard to substantiate it. So, I think that's the tough part, you know. Calling white people a little less closer to animals, true savages, acting is not freedom of speech. It's hate speech is when you're inciting violence. And by the way, I don't have a problem with people exposing themselves. I think Nick was caught up in the moment and said some stuff that maybe he hasn't fully thought through or fully agrees with. And I think it's okay for somebody to be wrong and then somebody to come alongside and correct him without him being canceled and deplatformed, right? I think when you start doing things to hurt people, when your words are inciting violence, I think that is where we got to draw the line, right? And I don't think that's what Nick was doing. How should we go about addressing the sentiments put forward by people like Louis Farrakhan that seem prevalent, especially today? It's a smaller population or something that needs to be addressed. I'm addressing it right now. I think they're wrong. And I think they need to be corrected. And I think they are an overcorrection and an overreach of the very thing they're trying to dismantle, which is systemic racism. Again, listen, Farrakhan, Fruit of Islam, referred to Malcolm X and why he left. That to me should dead the conversation, right? If you want to hear somebody have a thoughtful dialogue on black Hebrew Israelite, check out my man Zadok. Zadok identifies as an Israelite. He's black, and he has an amazing view of all this stuff, right? And he actually has the history of where it started and the false prophecy and where the group split and all that kind of stuff. Came up in it, you know? Do you think it has to do with how easily misinformation is spread? Yeah, absolutely, because anybody can write a book and publish a book nowadays. You know, Nick Cannon was out here praising Farrakhan, the biggest anti-Semite. You can't publicly agreeing with a person who has repeatedly said Hitler was a great man. Yeah, and again, Farrakhan is wild, and I do not agree with him. And I will get blowback in the comment section, and I can turn the comment section if I need to. Nick is wrong in that. Again, said that before. You know what I'm saying? Nick is also in a position where he has access to a lot of different perspectives. And I'm sure if people reached out to him, this could have been handled either privately and then with like a follow-up episode. And maybe it still will be. Maybe he'll bring on a rabbi to give some of the other perspective on this. And it doesn't take a ton of research to look up and again, is it possible that black people were Israelites and are Israelites? Sure. Is it possible that white people completely hijacked the entire Jewish Israel culture and took it? That's really hard. That's really hard to prove, right? What is your perspective on correction versus vengeance? I think vengeance is up to the Lord, right? I think vengeance is up to the Lord. So is this vengeful? Maybe. I don't know. You have to know somebody's intent to know if it's vengeful. You should get Ishan on the channel. Again, he's been on Instagram talking about Hebrew Israelites. Yeah, I know Ishan. I'm friends with Ishan. I consider Ishan a friend. Do you think Nick's argument offers the opportunity for the forgiveness of oppressors? I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? Again, who is the oppressor? Right? Who is the oppressor? Is it all white people? I don't know. I don't know. Have I benefited from my whiteness? Yes. I've acknowledged my white privilege. It's not cool. I'm doing everything I can to have meaningful conversation with my white brothers and sisters about the things that need to change. I do things need to be changed, both systemically and culturally and all that kind of stuff, right? That's why one of the reasons why I have this channel. Opportunity for the forgiveness of the oppressor. I don't know who the oppressor is. Some people would look at me and say I'm the oppressor without again, this is where this whole fallacy comes from, without having any context that my dad looks more Arab than anything else. And he was discriminated against during 9/11 and being on airplanes and like, you see what I'm saying? Like, so are Muslim and Middle Eastern people white or not? Because that's my lineage. I mean, Google it, Armenian. Some people view Armenians as white, some people don't. I don't know. Am I white in the context of this country? Yes. Right? He doesn't need to hear from a Jewish rabbi. I think he does. I think we all need to have conversations with people who disagree with. All white people oppressors. I don't consider a newborn white baby an oppressor. Wait, I don't understand. Not all white people are oppressors. Yes. Right? Where does oppression come from? Because what's problematic about this is saying this is nature. This is saying people are born like this. That's not what sociology teaches, right? It's not what sociology teaches. Nature or nurture, right? So if not all white people are oppressors, newborn baby can't be an oppressor, that means it's learned. That means that hate can be learned either way. I'm not mad at you, but some things are just they're just not, though. They're just not. And if they are, prove them. Prove them. Make a video, prove them. I don't know. Thanks for the nuanced take. We need more long-form discussions like this. I can't believe I haven't come across you before. Appreciate that, Jordan. Your pops is not Arab. What? Arabs are like, what? Like, this is what I'm talking about. And this is why I like this feature. Check this out. You guys ready? Bam. There you go, Devin. Bye-bye. And don't be mad to be wrong. We all learn in 2020. Nick has a large and diverse audience. He should have been careful with his words. He should have been careful. Yeah, it depends on the definition. I would disagree that everyone with light skin. And not to like keep reiterating, but what about people with vitiligo, right? I think I said that word right. Right? What about those people? Right? Like, so they lack melanin and like, you see what I'm saying? Like, you just get into some really weird stuff, you know? There are black people that albinos, yeah. Vitiligo is a skin condition. Albinos are people who are born that way, right? Who don't have melanin. Like, what? Yeah, this is live. So, what are we talking about? You know, there are people being oppressed in the Middle East and North Korea than American. There are people being oppressed, and that's terrible. So again, you got to get into definitions. You got to get into listen, by and large, broad generalities are the epitome of ignorance. When all white people are this, or all black people are this, or all Asian people are this, you're entering some murky waters that is gonna do more harm than good. And that's just the truth. And that is why this is so problematic. As a Latin kid from the other side of the tracks, a victimhood mindset related to seeds were sowed on myself and many of my homies. I realized this through observation. And thus, I don't know how much of like the victimhood thing, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how much of that, like I'm gonna say the left or the liberals are creating a victim mentality. I don't know how much of that I believe. I'll explain here in a second. haven't been there. The celebrities with similar statements to what Nick Cannon said. I don't know. I think those that have been probably haven't said it in this social media climate. I don't agree with his statements, but I'm wondering why him and not other figures. Your father is not an Arab. They are black. Your father is a descendant of another racial group who took over. Oh my gosh. My father is Armenian. Google it. I don't know, fam. I don't know. I think it's interesting that you're going to tell me what my father is or isn't. That's hilarious, you know? I have albinism. Albino is a predominantly derogatory term, not throwing shade, just as you can. Thank you. Can you define what the proper term is? I'd love to. Albino is a derogatory term? Thank you. I didn't know that. See, I just learned something. My bad. I apologize. I didn't know that was derogatory. If that is, my fault. I can't believe some black people support the same rhetoric that was used against. That's the ironic part, right? That was leprosy, dog, not vitiligo. Wait, no, vitiligo is what Michael Jackson had, right? Where he had patchy skins, where his pigment went away. Right? I'm not talking about leprosy. I'm talking about vitiligo. I think his firing shows peeps are trying to be fair. It was racist. LOL. If a white person said the same about blacks, he would be racist too. Maybe. It goes back to your definition of what racism is. What is racism? Right? Is racism viewing one race as superior or inferior to another race? Right? And then discriminating against said race? Or does there have to be a minority and power and prejudice combined? Does there have to be power? Right? Some would argue black people can't be racist. I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't care. You know, I'll be honest, I agree with Nick till he started to talk about white people being less than. I believe that African Americans are the true Hebrews, but there's a lot of hate coming out of that group. Again, can African American be Hebrews? Sure, yeah, why not? I don't see why people can't trace their lineage back, and if you have a way of doing that, then more power to you. When you start saying white people are less than, white people are closer to animals, closer to savages, barbarians, jeez, that's not good. The condition is called albinism. It occurs in every ethnicity and culture. It is a lack of pigmentation in the eyes, hair, and skin. It is pronounced albinism. All right, I just learned something. Let me Google that. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. It says it's a genetic disorder that causes the skin, hair, or eyes to have little or no color. Albinism is also associated with vision problems. Did not know that. Wow, I just learned something. Race is a social construct. Luke, thank you. When Nick Cannon was beefing with Eminem, he brung race into it. That's when he lost me. I don't think I think Nick Cannon beefing with Eminem was justified because Eminem said some foul stuff about Mariah Carey, and he shouldn't have. But I don't think Nick Cannon had any business making diss songs against Eminem. That's the problem. Blacks have been stripped of that heritage. Again, maybe. I don't know. Right? There are some people that take on the identity of Israel, like my man Zadok. Go look up Zadok. I promise you, here's Zadok on these things. He has the best, most balanced perspective on this, and he's an amazing Christian believer, all that kind of stuff. Why do we still use the term race to differentiate one another when we are all a part of the human race? Ethnicity, I think, would be a better definition. I think we should really all do our, what is that called? The DNA genealogy test. I think that'd be great. In Mexico, we can discuss the issues with colorism. Indigenous people of Mexico are seen different due to the darkness of their skin. Any thoughts of that? Yeah, colorism is a real thing. I think it is. I think that the tricky part with colorism is when you compare, and again, this is where it gets flawed, right? But when you compare people who are black versus people who immigrated here from Africa, and then you look at the performance rate, right? And usually the net wealth of people who immigrated here from the West Indies and Jamaica and Nigeria and Ghana, those people tend to overperform a lot of white people, right? So if by the logic of colorism and systemic racism, they're outliers. Now, why could they be outliers? Well, maybe because some people say, well, because this thing doesn't exist, colorism doesn't exist, or it could be because you bring in the best of the best that immigrated here and won the lottery, right? The same thing with Asians. People are always like, Asians are smart. Asians are smart. What about Asians? Why can't black people be like Asians? Well, it's like, first of all, the black people we're talking about were brought here against their will. One, Only group of people that's ever happened to. And then two, you're talking about Asians who were the cream of the crop, the best, right, brought here. So you're not, it's not a fair comparison. So is colorism real? Yeah, I think so. Glad you're addressing this. This is a long-standing issue in the Afrocentric community, so the answer is it was not balanced. The short answer you did yesterday is not balanced? I don't know, man. Personally, I say be proud of your ethnicity or culture, but when you start looking down at other ethnicities, you start becoming a supremacist. I'd agree. Do we need to pay more attention to stopping the action of inequality and stopping those who are committing it, or do we need to spend our time finding the oppressor? That's a great question. Probably both. Also, look up Jane Gasson. She states color makes up 3% of human DNA. That's a good point. Regardless of what you call it, some black people have messed up views. I have biracial kids, and so many black people have thrown shade at me and some wild stuff. Yes, this is also true. Nick Cannon is the same mindset as T.I. I used to support him until he kicked a kid out for liking Trump. Yeah, that wasn't cool. I don't support everything he does, but kicking someone because of their political belief is dumb. I agree. Yeah, there was a white person that told my sister, who is lighter than me, that she doesn't have the right to feel anything about injustice towards black people because she doesn't experience it. A white person told your sister that? That's wild, yo. Yeah, Jane Elliott. I'm familiar with Jane. By the way, guys, like, I'm familiar with Jane Elliott. I'm familiar with white fragility. You know what I mean? Like, one of my mentors was the head of sociology. So I'm very familiar with a lot of these things. I'm not a know-it-all. I don't know everything. I didn't get my bachelor's in sociology. I almost did, but I'm fairly versed in some of these things. The first person was acidic black man. Prove it. Like, what? Like, what? Was Adam and Eve darker skinned? If we're going to go back to that, Mesopotamia, Adam and Eve, whichever one you want to look at it. Were they darker skinned? Yes. You got it. For sure. Right? No doubt about it. I think so. Was Jesus darker skinned? Yes. Was he of African ancestry? I don't know. To me, I don't see his comments as anti-anything. It's a colorism complexion issue due to indicators of the ancestry of Anglo-Saxon and Viking people and cultures. Yeah, but okay, here's the thing. You're adding colorism to Anglo-Saxon and Viking people. Not all people with light color in their skin or lack of melanin go back to Anglo-Saxon and Viking cultures. That is the issue. That is the issue. Any thoughts on Margaret Sanger, eugenics and affiliation with racist crowds? Yeah, I think Margaret Sanger was a racist, and I think abortion clinics being put in the black community was racist. It was, again, eugenics is racist. I think we have to call that for what it is, right? And so, yeah, totally. I think it's racist. I think she was racist. I think abortion is horrible, right? Yeah. As a black woman with albinism, I have learned to appreciate the diversity, and I've had to learn that emotions can get in the way of reconciliation. Amen. Thank you for sharing. Careful with using DNA percentages to determine how human we are. Humans are 50% genetically similar with bananas. Wow, didn't know that. Song of Solomon proves that Jesus was white? No, it doesn't. What? I've always wondered why characters in the Old Testament were turned white as a punishment, often referred to as leprosy also if they were turned white. Then what were they beforehand? That's an interesting point. I mean, again, I don't think the characters in the Bible were European and white. I don't know how many times I got to say that. Imagine if a white person said what Nick said about black people. Yeah, that would be bad. But they do say all kinds of wild stuff. Again, look at Tucker Carlson. I was going to say the term ethnicity, just didn't want the comment to be long. The guy from that So Raymond keeping his job, so why can't he? True. Adrian, yeah, anyway. So listen, guys, believe what you want. Like, at the end of the day, believe what you want. I don't think Nick should have been fired. But again, this is a private corporation. They could do what they want. I think ViacomCBS could have created content out of this, and it would have been way more beneficial. You know what I mean? It would have been way more beneficial. I think these views are out of a place of hurt and out of a place of overcorrection. And I think that's unfortunate. Can you agree that Asians may have a better work ethic and not so much best of the best? I think work ethic is cultural. So you're talking about the best of the best who came here based on a lottery system. Like any immigrant that comes here is gonna usually perform very well. So that's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? So no, I don't think. And it's again, Asians, Jamaicans, West Indians, Nigerians, Ghanaians. Look at the success rate of those people, right? Their kids grow up in a culture where there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of expectations, right? As somebody who comes as an immigrant, has friends like I have friends from Ghana. You know what I'm saying? I got friends from Nigeria. It's different. Because they like the odds to get in are so much higher that you're dealing with a culture that just operates different. You know? So, what about their kids? Out the description of the male in that book, he is described as ivory. Oh, stop it. Solomon was not mad, and he represents Jesus. Oh my gosh. Jesus had skin of bronze, hair of wool. We're not going to perpetuate a white Jesus here, bro. That's not what we're going to do. It's just not accurate. It's just not accurate. Like, Jesus fled Israel and was raised in Egypt. Like, he had to have blended in Egypt. Like, that's in there. What are we talking about? They weren't brought here. They were born here and still achieved the best scores. And I feel you are correct as the ethnic group culture. Yeah, again, brought here by families that made it out. I wasn't born here. My brother and sister were born here. My brother and sisters. My brothers and sisters had both parents in the home. My dad wasn't in my life. They blew me out of the water, right? My sister's about to be a lawyer. My brother went to USC. My little sister's going to USC, right? So it's the culmination, right? Parents in the home, being brought here, having that immigrant mentality, so on and so forth. When you compound that, that is when you have these highly successful people. You say they weren't white, you say they were dark, then you say they weren't African. What? Okay. Beneficial to who though? Maybe not. Maybe not if you don't want light on something without getting into the racial dynamic. Why does the U.S. pay Israel so much per day? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I don't think Nick should have been fired because if you look at objective anthropological facts as well as scientific facts regarding how trauma is passed down through generations, what he said holds weight. Ooh, yeah, nah, fam. Go back to the beginning of this video, rewatch it. True, this is the issue that colorism, melanated ill, we know that through origins of humanity, both throughout the Bible and science we have came out of Africa. Got no problem with saying that original man was in Africa. Got no, or Mesopotamia, which is right next to Africa. So sure. Doesn't Revelation describe Jesus being the color of bronze? Amen. Right? And again, he was raised in Egypt, born in Israel, raised in Egypt. The government didn't drop crack cocaine in Chinatown. They dropped it in South Central. He is referring to the CIA being complicit, this is a fact, in allowing cocaine to flood black neighborhoods in the 80s. Substantiated claim. Man, does his character limit things conversation? Eminem should have been fired. He kept trying to reach people. Tucker Carlson just makes all kinds of off points in my opinion, and I think when the writer for you comes out as a wildly racist person on these things, I think it should be examined, some of the claims. Covert racism versus overt racism. You can do your own Googles. I'm curious, what's the scripture, Ronald? I like what you have to say. I'm glad you were bringing God into the conversation. I'll be watching. Yeah, go back and watch that video. I am white and I got a lot of trouble. I feel it is a wealth privilege. There is wealth privilege. There's white privilege. There's wealth privilege. There's two family parent privilege. There's pretty privilege. There's all kinds of privilege. Why are white people so triggered by privilege? Like, stop. So I don't know. When the Jews are described in the Bible, they said they look like Egyptians. The Egyptians were not white. They were brown skin. Again, white, not white. Egyptians, not Like, they probably didn't look like white Europeans. I'll give you that. So Jesus was black, and the people in the Old Testament who got leprosy proved they were black. Unbelievable. Didn't say that. I said Jesus had skin of bronze. Black is a social construct created within the last couple hundred years. Guys, come on. Why do I have to keep repeating myself? Nick's comments made me cringe. Definitely. I love the block button. I just want you guys to know that. Yeah, there's just a lot of hate being perpetuated, man, on both sides. It's a bummer. Crates of guns found in Chicago's in the 90s in various hoods. I should look into that. That's really interesting. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. People speak in such definite ways that it comes across so cringy. Yes, that's the issue, is it not? We speak in absolutes. We don't look at nuance. It's one side versus the other side. And very few people here even have an image on their YouTube profile, let alone put their face on social media and actually offer up like a formulated thought on any of this, right? So that's interesting, you know. That's interesting. So I don't know. Look, I'm so down to learn new stuff, man. I think you guys should make videos. Like, instead of saying something crazy in a comment section, how about you make a video? Respond. Tap into your creative side. Why not? You know? So anyway, thank you guys for watching this. Give this video a like, thumbs up, subscribe. I think you'd appreciate that. And I don't know, guys. I just don't got time for the nonsense. So if you want to be thoughtful, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to be gross, we'll just go ahead and hit the ban button, or just turn off the comments. I'm totally down for that too. Appreciate you guys.